Atenția pentru Marea Neagră a crescut în ultima vreme și acest lucru se datorează mai multor factori. Pe de o parte, avem acțiunile Rusiei, care, după ce a anexat ilegal Peninsula Crimeea, a comasat în regiune armată și a adus echipamente militare. De cealaltă parte, NATO este pregătit să descurajeze acțiunile provocatoare ale rușilor și să răspundă, dacă este cazul. România are rolul să traducă ce se întâmplă în regiune și are și ajutor pentru asta: aliații. Am fost la Baza Mihail Kogălniceanu împreună cu ambasadorul Canadei la București, doamna Annick Goulet, să-i cunoaștem pe piloții canadieni care apără spațiul nostru aerian. Aflăm și detalii despre avioane de la Corey Mask, comandantul Forței Aeriene Canadiene din România. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport Diplomatic. Ambassador Annick Goulet, for the second time on the diplomatic passport, welcome again, and thank you for bringing us to the MK military base here in Romania.
It's a pleasure to have you. Actually, you may remember in the last interview we discussed about you accompanying me to Mihail Kogălniceanu, so I'm delighted to have you with me.
Canada, celălaltă partener transatlantic, este foarte implicată în securizarea granițelor NATO. Piloții canadieni sunt deja la a 6-a misiune la Marea Neagră în baza Mihail Kogălniceanu, dar nu crește tensiunea dacă de o parte și de alta flancului estic se accentuează prezența militară și în aer și pe mare, pentru că niciuna dintre părți nu-și dorește incidente, se lucrează cu mare atenție, iar cel mai important rol le revine, ca de obicei, diplomaților pentru a ține lucrurile sub control.
The Black Sea is a region that started to draw attention, especially after Russia invaded Crimea and actually took it. And the question is, since behind you is an airplane belonging to the Canadian Air Force, what is this type of mission? Is it complementary to the diplomacy?
Absolutely. I think in general, diplomacy and military missions are really the two sides of the same coin. And here, as you said, this NATO base and the NATO commitment is to defend all members. And especially in this very volatile region, where, as you said, there was military aggression, illegal annexation of Crimea, and still continued build-up of military capacity on the Black Sea. So Canada, from the very beginning in 2014, we've been involved in Operation Reassurance, an operation under NATO. We have, in the same context, on the eastern flank of NATO, we have a big contingent in the north, in Latvia, more than 500 people, military people, and here that's, on the southern flank, also a very, very important commitment for us, because Romania is a valued, very close NATO ally. So we are here every year since 2017. We were here also in 2014, so it's the sixth time that we have a military contingent from Canada in Romania. And you see, it's an enhanced air policing mission that we've been part this year. As I said, it's the sixth time, and it's with about 150 people. And the idea, because you were asking about how it's complementary, so this security element really comes to assure that you, Romania, Europe, Canada, we can, in a safe environment, continue to do the rest of what we want to do and reach the other objectives in trade, being prosperous on the economic side and also being able to preserve our values and our democratic institutions. So that's how we get together, and we complement the two sides. And I'd like to give you some additional actually elements or examples. It's not only here at Mihail Kogălniceanu where we do that, but also for me diplomatically. So as you know, security is a big important pillar of my mandate, and one other area where we complement the military side and the diplomatic side is, for example, on values. We talked in the past about diversity and inclusion. For us, women empowerment is something very important, And it is important as well on the military side. So we have been working on this, including with the Secretary of State Simona Cojocaru. I hosted recently a big seminar, high-level seminar on women, peace and security, where she was present. She was a keynote speaker. We also had one of our generals, Lieutenant General Joe Paul, who is actually the first most high-ranking native officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. And we discussed inclusion in general, especially women, because as you probably know, women are the first to be impacted by conflicts and by violence in insecure environments. So that's something that, but we also work very, very closely on Romania and Canada. And at that symposium or that seminar, we also had some female ambassadors based in Bucharest and an NGO headed by a Canadian, Patrir, based in Cluj. So we discussed on the military side, but also on the civilian side, how we can reinforce security at large for our societies, both on the diplomatic side and in the army.
We are in a NATO base. It's quite a big one for the region, and here there are a lot of, let's say, nationalities of allies usually, and Canada is not on the friendly lists when it comes to Moscow, along with the United States, along with Australia, United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. How is this, let's say, helping diplomacy? Do diplomats still talk to each other at this level, or is this type of missions enough and that's it in the relationship with Moscow?
I think, NATO and other members, including the US, Canada, or, the UK or others, Romania, I think we always insist that, yes, we want to defend ourselves. That's very important. So using deterrence to prevent any additional aggression or aggressive behavior is certainly a goal, but we always want this to be combined with dialogue. Dialogue should not cease because we have those frictions. Actually, dialogue is very important, because if you just stay each other on your side, and then it can easily build up, just trigger a conflict you would not want. So dialogue, I think, is important.
In the, let's say, common sense of Romanians, there is a new rumor, like United States is moving its attention towards China, so it's abandoning us. It's something that we keep on hearing. On the other hand, I have to ask, since Canada is a very strong transatlantic partner, why do people have this tendency of forgetting that we already have a strong partnership and now this zone is secure and perhaps attention goes to somewhere else, but it doesn't mean it disappears from here?
Well, maybe because it's well established. When it has become very, very natural, people tend to forget. But, I can reassure you that certainly, and I know it's the case also for the Americans, but certainly for Canada, this mission and this region remains really at the heart of our mission, and we remain here as a reliable partner for Romania. And coming back to what we were discussing earlier, it comes back to complementarity. Maybe Romania does not see us as giving as much attention as they would expect, but we do, because we know it's a safe environment, because we are here and we are committed to defend Romania as a valued partner. We are also here to explore other things that we can do in a safe environment. We're very active on the trade side. We discussed this also last time, but climate change, we have similar objectives, and we want to advance clean energies, clean technologies. Not very far from here, I don't know in which direction, but there is the Chernobyl power plant, nuclear power power plant, where Canada has been very much involved since the beginning. Actually, I think now is the 25th anniversary of the first reactor, a CANDU reactor. So that's something that we continue doing, and that means that we are here to stay side by side with Romania to build a stable economy, prosperous economy, and also to defend the values that we share.
So we cannot even question the thing that Canada is far away and still present here. We have to take it for granted.
Absolutely, and you know, I'll make sure to remind you from time to time.
Okay. We, as we said and see from the very beginning of this interview, are present in a military base, and we are talking about airplanes and security, but security in this century means also cyber attack, and I can mention at least two states that are playing, let's say, dirty when it comes to cyber. In the same time, since we don't hear quite a lot about cyber attacks, although cyber attacks happens daily, that shows as well the capacity of NATO to prevent them and to make them stop. But is it fair for the West to play by the rule when it comes to cyber attacks in front of this type of cyber states attacks?
I think so. I think it's important to remind ourselves for our common well-being, not only globally or because we want to be fair, you know, to aggressors, but I think just for ourselves, we have to be conscious of the risks that come with the threat that you mentioned, cyber threat. These are coming at the time of, you know, huge, rapid technological innovations. These are great, but we have to harness, you know, the power because it has, unfortunately, a huge potential to disrupt our society. So it's not only, you know, as you said, the cyber attacks, you know, on telecoms, but it's also, you know, on military, civilian installations, it's ports, airports, it's all the supply chains, it's food, it's fuel, it's medication, medical equipment, as we know well now with the pandemic. So if we have to be conscious of the threat, and then we have to develop ways to counter the attacks and do it in a responsible way. That's very, very important. And I think NATO has achieved that. We have, you know, some centers, we have some strategies, tools as well. So there is the cyberspace operations center that makes sure that we share information between among members to be able to counter, to defend ourselves. There's also an academy of cyberspace. I think it's called the NATO Communications and Information Academy, based in Portugal, and basically training the next generation of cyber defenders. I think it's about 6,000 of this young generation that's being trained every year. And then some critical strategies like the artificial intelligence, the strategy of NATO to make sure that we have the tools in artificial intelligence to not only analyze, gather information, but also counter threats. And again, that's one of the key principles guiding those centers, but those tools and everything we're trying to do, including with the industry, it's doing that in a responsible way, in respect to the citizens, to each of the members, and including globally our competitors.
You mentioned earlier the climate change, and recently Prime Minister of Canada said that Canada will do its part. On the other hand, we saw that at COP26 many important countries were not present, and I will name Russia and China mainly. Does it matter if some of the countries do their part and the rest of the countries, which are also big countries and big polluters, do not do their part?
Well, I think we also have to distinguish physical presence and at what level and actual action. So, you know, just to give you another example, you may not see us physically with a lot of visits, although there were a lot of military high-level visits from Canada here in Mihail Kogălniceanu in the last couple of months. But even if you haven't seen, our Prime Minister or the Governor General in the recent months, it has nothing to do with our commitment.
Actions,
We're very committed to Romania, as I said, as this military contingent proves. I won't comment necessarily on the physical presence of heads of state at Glasgow. There can still be the dialogue that we were referring to earlier with some of our competitors. There can be dialogue on issues like climate change, even if not everyone we wanted at the table, even if they are not there in presence physically. I think there's no choice. It's not only us. I think it's also in their interest because they are developing technologies that are good for the climate. They're also polluting, but it's not something that people can do in a segmented, compartmented way. We are all victims of that, and we're all actors in trying to find solutions. So I think we need to engage those other players, whether or not they are represented by their leaders at Glasgow or elsewhere.
If we return back to the mission of Canadian here in Romania, it would be this will end at the end of November. It will continue.
It will continue. Next year we'll be back.
Ambassador, thank you so much, and maybe next year we'll come back here as well.
Absolutely, I invite you.
In a much warmer day.
Let's do it at the beginning of the mission in August or September.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cristina.
CF-18 Hornet este modelul de avion de luptă multirol care poate fi folosit pe orice tip de vreme, atât ca platformă de luptă, cât și ca platformă de atac. Aceste aparate de zbor sunt parte din misiunea de poliție aeriană derulată de aliații canadieni de pe baza Mihail Kogălniceanu. NATO derulează de 60 de ani astfel de acțiuni pentru siguranța spațiului aerian aliat și la baza din România vin pe rând piloți din mai multe state membre ale Alianței Nord-Atlantice.
We are filming in Mihail Kogălniceanu base, and we are talking with Lieutenant Colonel Cory Mask, commander of the Canadian Air Task Force Romania. Welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to have you guys at the base today.
NATO celebrated this year 60 years since they created the Air Police, and you are part of one of these missions here in Romania. So can you explain us a bit how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here as part of the NATO Enhanced Air Policing mission. So starting in 2014, they've as part of NATO assurance measures, they instituted that. So Enhanced Air Policing is here to support the Romanians as well, to protect the eastern flank. So our main mission here is to provide additional assets to be able to detect, ID, deter, and then demonstrate some NATO resolve along the eastern flank.
Let's assume that Russians are right now very close to the Romanian airspace. What is happening and what decisions you are taking here?
All right, so how it works, and we fall into a NATO command and control structure. So the parent organization is the NATO Combined Air Operations Center in Torreon, Spain. So they're looking at the overall airspace, and then so they have direct communications to the command and reporting center, Crystal, that's in Bucharest. So they will then contact us on our air policing, and then they will tell us when we have to change our readiness state or when it's time to scramble.
And usually the Russians are trespassing our airspace, or it's just flying too close to our airspace?
So it depends upon the situation. So part of the detection of air threats and then identification of anybody that flies into NATO airspace, that's where it falls into place. So there's the Romanian flight information region. So that's the main area of concern, that if a non-NATO air track flies into the flight information region, that's where NATO starts to get more concerned with it, and we would respond to the airspace violation.
This is a Canadian mission, but it's a Romanian base. So how do you work with the Romanian counterparts?
So for us, we collaboratively ensure the protection of the NATO's eastern flank. So air policing is naturally a Romanian responsibility, and then when we supplement it. So NATO will make the decision of if we will get sent airborne or if the Romanians will get sent airborne. But we're able to work, we're interoperable together and work together to be able to achieve this mission.
Can you describe us a bit the equipment you are working with, this plane behind you?
Yes, this is the CF-18 Hornet. We had these since 1982 when we started receiving them. We have it's an air-to-air and an air-to-ground platform capable of day and night all-weather intercepts. It's seen action in from Gulf War I through Kosovo, Aviano when we were deployed there, Libya,
hotspots, a lot of
hotspots around the world. Yeah, and it's ideally suited for the NATO air policing mission.
And when you have to live in a mission, how do you do it exactly? I mean,
so when we get scrambled, the jets are fully ready. So what we do is we prepare them. So we've set all the switches so that we can rapidly jump into the cockpit and then be able to start in a very quick amount of time. And then all it is to start the engines, start the flight control systems, just warm them up, and then arm the aircraft and then take off.
And that's a matter of how many minutes?
It's a short amount of time. The exact number is based upon the response state that we're mandated to be on, but it happens quickly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă de la 22:30. La revedere!